Joining another All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal, Principal Developer Advocate for Pluralsight. My job is to help you be more awesome. So, if there's anything I can do, well, on your journey, learning technology, software, programming, languages, especially in the space of JavaScript and Node.js and web programming, Electron, all those kinds of things. I'm could be one of the people to help you. Um, Databases are also one of my favorites. I used to do a lot of database work, SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, uh, relational databases in general. Well, thank you for joining. Uh, we've been on a journey on this stream for uh, some time now, maybe a few months, learning to build a online real-time trivia game. And we've made a lot of progress. We still have a lot more tasks ahead of us to get the this game across the finish line. And today we're going to focus on a countdown timer for the game itself. We implemented a countdown timer at the for the start of the game, but now that we have features in place for uh, recording answers and some basic scoring, we need to implement a time limit on the game itself so that as people are playing, there's a countdown to let them know the game is about to finish. And when the countdown timer hits zero, then the game is ended for everyone playing, and we uh, calculate the final scores and give the results. Hogsworth Emo Dragon, thank you for joining once again. You're one of my faithful um, attendees for these sessions, and I really appreciate you showing up so faithfully week after week. Speaking of which, I was out last week. Last week was spring break, and I took a much appreciated time off with and spent some time in the woods. My favorite place, in the mountains or lakes, streams, hiking, camping. I love that stuff, and that was a great way for me to spend some time with the family and recharge a bit. So if you're following along, if this is your first time here on this stream, welcome. Thank you for joining. If you want to follow along on this with the source code, that is on my GitHub repository, github.com/Reverend Geek, a hot dash trivia dash game. And let's see. Let's go ahead and switch over to my other monitor here. Ah, one moment. I was not prepared. Thought I had everything set up and ready to go. Let's try this again. There we go. Now you can see my screen, I hope. And now I'm wondering if that's looks correct or does that look backwards? Um, Let me know in the comments if the screen looks reversed or not. Yeah, it's backwards. Dadgummit. Um, hmm. Let me see if I can switch that. Now it should be cooking, I think. Whew, disaster averted. Okay. If you want to grab the source code, it's on my Reverent Geek GitHub repository at ahot-trivia-game. Let's see. I'm going to launch Visual Studio Code using code at the command prompt. And if you're a Visual Studio Code user and don't have that feature enabled, let me give you a quick tip on that right now. Turn off this caption. So, I think it's Command Shift P or Control Shift P if you're on Windows, brings up the command palette where you can find all kinds of goodies inside Visual Studio Code. And if you search for code, there is a command to install the code command in your path. So you can use that when working in a terminal to launch Visual Studio Code in the current directory. And boy, that comes in handy a lot. So I've got Visual Studio Code open and a little bit of housekeeping. One of the things it's been a couple of weeks since I've been in the project. One of the things that I like to do on a regular basis is to check to see if there's been any updates. So we're using Node.js, and I use NVM as my Node.js manager, so I can have multiple versions of Node installed on my system. Highly recommend if you're on Windows that you use the Windows subsystem for Linux. There's just a lot of tooling and everything that's available to you in that really nice, gives you that terminal experience that folks on Mac and Linux enjoy, and I'm one of them. I'm a converted Windows user to Mac. I've been on Mac now for many years, and I really like the environment. If I wasn't on Mac, I might even consider making Linux my full-time system these days because I enjoy the programming experience of working with the command line system and the terminals and stuff that are available. But if I was on Windows, if I was back on Windows again, I would definitely use and I recommend the Windows subsystem for Linux. And NVM is a Node version manager, and there's lots of different commands. That command NVM ls lists the versions of Node.js that I have installed. 16.20, 18.15, which is highlighted as my current version, the one that's active, and then 19.9. So 19.9 is a beta version of Node.js that's being actively worked on. There's some new features and experimental features and things that are available in that version. Later this year, version 19 will be promoted to version 20, and 19 will disappear, and 20 will become the supported long-term, or what they call LTS, long-term support version of Node.js. So it'll become the stable supported version. So being able to play around with different versions of Node and compare them, definitely not necessary to get your work done, but if you like to geek out about Node ecosystem stuff, new versions of Node, the NVM is the way to do it. So NVM ls ls remote -remote, and you can give it a version number. That'll tell you if what versions of that are available for that major version. And I see that version 18.16 is now out. So I'm going to use NVM install to install the latest version of 18. And now if I do NVM ls to list the local versions of Node, I've got an 18.15 and an 18.16. I'm going to uninstall 18.15 because I no longer need that. Hopefully. Back in the early days of Node.js, things could break, and they often did with version updates. But hopefully we don't see much of that anymore. Okay, so the other bit of housekeeping that I like to do is to check for outdated packages in the project that we're working in. So npm outdated. So npm, not to be confused with nvm, is the package manager. And it's what you use to install and update packages in your project. So we see that there's 3 dependencies that have gotten some minor updates. No major versions released, so probably pretty safe to update these. So I'm going to run npm update to download and install these. And just to check everything's up to date. And I'm going to run, I think the command is npm run dev. I think that's our application script for building and serving up the application. So now the application is running, and I'm just going to command click on that link. That'll bring up the game, and the game is absolutely beautiful. Not yet. So we're using Tailwind to style the interface, but we've only done some very minimal styling so far. That is coming in a future streaming episode. So localhost 8080, and I'll say player 2. Right now it's configured for a 2-player game, and it's counting down to start the game, and we've got the game running. So we have a hack in the game right now to tell us what the correct answer is, because we got all these mock-up questions. We don't have real trivia questions in the game yet, so we've just generated a bunch of random stuff, and each question has a random set of choices, either true, false, or multiple choice, and it's random which choice is the correct one. So 0, being zero indexed, is the first choice. So true should be correct. Choice 1 should be correct. And we see the score incrementing. And that's what we worked on the last stream. If you want to go back and look at the recordings for any of that stuff, that's available on our YouTube channel. I know Twitch keeps some, like I forget what the threshold is, but Twitch keeps a few things around for a little while, but not indefinitely. But on our YouTube channel, if you go to Pluralsight's YouTube channel, you can find all the previous streams, and the one we did a couple of weeks ago is how we put together the some rudimentary scoring. So the next item on our list of things to do for the game is to automatically stop the game when time is up or when all players have answered all questions. Um, Hopefully, we got plenty of questions that the players couldn't get through all of them in the time allowed. But you know, um, I'm going to separate these out into two different tasks. Automatically stop the game when all players have answered all questions, because those are two very different um, behaviors or different problems to solve. We may borrow some code from one to the other, or pick off the same code or routines when the condition is met. But for now, I want to separate those and make this one like a stretch goal or optional kind of feature. But we definitely want to stop the game when the time is up. Um, Before we dive into the code, again, if you want to follow along, if you want to grab the source code for this, it's on my GitHub repository slash reverent geek slash ahot dash trivia dash game. And if there are any questions that you have along the way, uh, matter of fact, you know, if you haven't done so already, you know, drop a comment into wherever you're watching the stream and let me know where you're watching from. It's really cool to hear the connections that are made. I from one stream to another, I never know if people are returning or if we've got a whole new group of folks or what. It's just kind of cool to see how technology brings us together from all over the world, right? That's one of the reasons why I love doing what I do, and being a programmer is power of technology. The more you know. Um, let's see. Going to turn off this caption again. And let's see. Let's look at the code. So we have the project structure is such that at a high level, there's uh, the project set up with an environment variable file. It contains like port numbers and different things we want to use to configure the application or the service that's running. Um, we could also set those values by using actual environment settings, right? That's typically how Node.js applications are configured at runtime or hosted in production, is to you take advantage of environment variables to set um, different configuration things. There's our package JSON that has all our dependencies and our scripts for building and running the application. Um, this came up on a previous stream. No, we don't. We don't have any tests. We're just flying by the seat of our pants and learning as we go. Tests are a good idea, um, and under other circumstances, yes, I would be writing tests. But we're having fun, just winging it, right? In the source folder is the back end service. It's our Node.js code. It's the game server, or the bootstrap for the server is in index.js. That's where everything begins. There's a trivia JSON file that contains all of our quiz information. Right now, it's just a bunch of mock-up dummy data. And then there's a public folder that has our HTML front end stuff. So we're using Vue.js, and we're using Socket.io on the server side and the client side to do real time communications, and a lot of other cool stuff. So we're going to be working in both the back end server and the front end today to coordinate sending messages, or you know keeping track of the 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 time that's status for the countdown. So the game server, we have a bunch of states that I don't think we're currently using. Maybe we are. Yeah, we are using those as literals or constants. So we have this bootstrap. We have a way of sending the current state to the client. We have a method for sending the trivia to the client, all the trivia questions that are randomized each time the game is played. We have a countdown service that's currently only used for counting down the the beginning of that game. So we have three, two, one, and the game starts. So this is we're going to reuse this countdown timer to also set the state of to keep track of the time left for the game to end. Right now we have it hard coded. This may be a configuration option either um, when deployed or during. Um, it should be dynamic. It should be something that we eventually have like an admin panel or dashboard where the person who is managing the game or running the game can, tweak it however they want. So if they want the game to run 90 seconds, they should be able to change that setting. So for now, the game is going to run for 60 seconds. The countdown is 3 seconds. Countdown meaning the countdown to start the game. And then we've got some functions down here like a init game. That's where we randomize the trivia questions and select the top 50 of them. We start the game, and then we have our Socket.io subscriptions. So there's a when we get a connection from the client, then we set up these channels like join game, an answer. Those are the only two that we're receiving from the client right now. We may want, there may be features we want to implement later that the client needs to send more than just joining the game or answering a trivia question. So, init the game. So, right now, when the countdown is finished, we initialize the game, which is, where is that? Randomizing and sending the trivia. So when this happens, when we initialize the game, we also need to do the countdown again, and to start the 60-second countdown. So we'll do that in this step where we init the game. So we send the trivia. As soon as we send the trivia, we should essentially do the countdown again. And that the second time that we do the countdown, when it enters into that function, is going to figure out that based on the current state of the game, the first time it enters, it's the state is countdown. The second time it enters, the state will be active, and that means it'll start with 60 instead. So it'll, as it's counting down, it'll send the current state. And send state includes the state, the countdown, and the active players. So on the client is a Vue.js app, and we've got these components: home, join, waiting, countdown, and quiz. So if the quiz is running, we're passing the countdown, the current countdown, the uh, to the client. Let's see. And when the game server is set to game at the game when the countdown, the 60-second countdown finishes, it's going to update the state to game over and send that state to the client. So we're probably going to want to do something at the very end, something like states dot game over. We'll call a function here that will calculate the final scores of all the players and and send the final state down to the to each of the clients. Okay. Right now, this is an error, so we'll say else if console log game over. Okay. So on the quiz component. That is not the one I was looking for. So in the components folder, quiz.js, we are getting countdown as a property. We don't have the countdown being displayed right now, so let's display that. One of these days we'll make it look pretty. So every time I save any of the code, um, there's a developer process, NodeMon, that is looking for any files, source code files that change, and it's automatically restarting the service for us. So the back end's up to date. The front end, though, we still have to. We don't have anything fancy going on for the front end. We don't have like hot module code reloading or whatever. So we have to, hard refresh the browser tabs right now. So I'm just using Command R to refresh to make sure it has the latest uh, versions of those Vue components. So I'm going to start the game again. Reverend Geek has one player. Player 2 is the other player. We get our 3, 2, 1 countdown. So now, in addition to our player name, our score, we've got the countdown timer. So it's counting down from 60 seconds. I'm going to answer a couple of choices. It should be counting down on here too. So notice, what's important here is that the client is not keeping track of the number of seconds left in the game. The server is, the Node.js server, and the server is broadcasting to each of the clients the current state of the game, which includes how many seconds are left in the game. And so the client has no control over that. So you can't like hack the game in that respect. So at the end of the game here, what we should see is it goes blank. That's because the state of the game has changed to game over, and we haven't implemented a component yet for that state. So there's nothing to display because our game client doesn't have a component to display for game over. So on the server side, we do see that our game over was logged to the console. All this other stuff is console logs that we introduced last time when we were calculating the scores. So probably should clean that up at some point. Um, one of the one of the kind of best practices that a lot of Node.js and web um, developers have is that maybe an ESLint rule for no console logs. Don't use console.log to log stuff. But man, it's the easiest thing to do, right? Just throw a bunch of console logs in your code and view the output in the terminal. Ideally, you'd want to have some kind of logging system, like Winston or Bunyan, or there's a number of Pinot. That's a really good logger, and just configure Pinot in your project and use that to log messages, debug messages, and so forth. So you can set different levels of messages that are written, debug, warning, error, so forth. And that way, you're kind of setting your project up for success so that when it comes time, you've got all those messages in there. You can choose to log them based on like logging levels. If you only want to see warnings and errors, you can configure that as part of your environment. and hide debug messages. That's you know, I'm giving you some tips, but I'm not going to take those steps right now. Right now, we're just winging it with console log. Just okay. So that is working as we as it should. It's changing the state of the game. It's stopping the game for the clients. Um, since we're calculating, let me go to the right source code. Since we're calculating the uh, the scores as answers are made, there's not really a need to recalculate all the scores because every time we get an answer, we're updating um, the total correct, total incorrect, total skipped, and then calculating a final score. Um, so just trying to think through um, what else we may want to do before we just update the. Well, let's uh, let's just create a function here called endgame, and I mean it's already set the game over, but let's just do it anyway. So we don't have to do that here. We could refactor this to say if states dot countdown init game. Let's let's say init game sets the state to active. That way we kind of consolidate the code or refactor it so that we're like separating concerns, like the concern of the countdown timer should be just to, you know, do the countdown and then call the right function when it gets finished. It shouldn't include any of this kind of business logic of updating the state. That's not its job, so to speak. So um, if it's matter of fact, you know, we could move all of this logic into um, a kind of a state change kind of function that figures out all this stuff. For now, let's say if it's countdown, then we init the game. Otherwise, we end the game. console.log, game over. So the logic, I just thought of something. So to do the countdown, again, like that separation of concerns kind of thing, maybe total seconds is what we pass to the countdown as a argument. So when we initialize the game, we we do the countdown for 60 seconds. When we start the game, we do the countdown for 3 seconds. So when we're starting, we're we're doing a countdown of 3, 2, 1. When we init the game, we're doing a countdown of however many seconds. And again, in the future, this may be one or both of these will be configurable. So that's a good refactoring. That's again minimizing the amount of logic in the countdown function so that it all it knows or should know is what function to call. Oh, yeah. So we can further refactor this so we can remove a state check here by saying um, by passing a callback function, saying when the countdown is finished, countdown reaches 0, then use this callback. And that way, we can pass init game as the function to call back when the countdown is finished here. And we do the init game where we then the callback would be in game. So when and we could name this anything we wanted to. Callback is just a kind of a stand before there were promises, before there was async and await. A lot of functions used callback functions to say when you're done with everything that you're doing, use this function that I'm passing you to to you know return execution back to what we want to do or what we want to do next. So a lot of times those callback functions were like inline functions. In this case, we're passing named functions. So do the countdown 60 seconds, and when the 60 seconds is up, call in game, and it's going to change the state and send that to broadcast that to the clients. And conversely, when we're starting the game, we don't need this countdown equals 3 because we're passing 3 to the countdown. And we don't even need to send the state because Well, maybe we do, because the first step won't get called until 1 second into that. So um, let's go ahead and send the state. Init game. Countdown equals 60. Countdown equals 3. Let's see if all this is working. I'm going to refresh both of these tabs, start a new game. We'll say player 1, player 2 is Reverend Geek. 3, 2, 1, 0. Game is started. The countdown timer is working. So correct choice is 0. Correct choice is 2, 0, 1, 2. So I've got 200 points. I'm going to player 2 has 250 points now. I've got 300 points. 350, 300, 400, and so forth and so forth. So um, we can see that the scoring is working. Let's see if game is over. Game state gets updated to game over. And again, we are we're sending the current state of game over to broadcasting that to the clients, but the clients have we have not yet implemented a component to for the game over state. So everything's still working as expected. We've refactored. That was a good refactor. We've moved the logic um, of keeping track of game states and so forth out of the countdown timer, so that the countdown timer it just all it knows is that hey, when I'm done with doing this countdown thing, um, that's the function I should call back. All right. So let's quickly come up with a new component for game over. So let's just call the component game over. Um, let's take I'm going to take the quiz component and paste that into the game over because I know I'll need some props like we don't need countdown, so I can take that out. We don't need question or current question ID, but we do need a score. Um, we're not going to emit anything. We're just displaying to unless we want to, allow the person here to start a new game immediately, right? We may want to provide that experience. So um, let's use the same join that we used in the home component. To start a new game. So we don't need countdown or question. So what we need, maybe on the server side, is to calculate who the winner is. So even though the scores are calculated as the game is played, so that we don't really need to recalculate scores. We do want to determine the ranking of the players, but for now, let's just display um, something like game over, your score, and start a new game. Okay, we've got our game over JS. So now we go to our main client and let's set up this new component. So import game over, um, register this component as game over. And then down here in our template, game over, and this will be displayed if the state is equal to game over. And we'll set the player name equal to player name. Score equal to score. And we'll have a at join equals show join, which is what's up here at the home component. So if they click on the start a new game button, that triggers emitting the join message back to this parent component. Close that. So now let's refresh both of these. Start a new game. Reverent Geek. Player 2. 3, 2, 1. Correct choices here, here. Wrong answer. Correct answer. So far, player 2 has 250 points. True. 3, 2. So I'm up to 500 points now. 600 points. Come over here and 350, 450, 400. 350. And let's just let this finish. Game over. Your score is 600. Start a new game. Your score is 350. Start a new game. So takes us back to the join page. Okay. Well, we almost have a functioning game, or it is mostly functioning. We just need to calculate the the winner and display that information. Gosh, we're almost to the point where I got to start looking at making this thing look pretty. The functionality is almost there. Okay, so on that, I think it's a good spot to break for this session. What we did today was automatically stop the game when the time is up. We didn't calculate the winner, but we did allow the person to reset the game, but we may want to have the application itself show the winner and stuff for a period of time and then automatically uh, reset the game and take all the clients back to the home screen. Or maybe not. I mean, maybe this is exactly the behavior that folks would want in this game. So again, that may be something that's configurable, whether or not to automatically reset the game. Let's check our get status. Can't. We've updated a number of things and added a new component. So while I'm checking in the code, if there are any questions from today's stream, anything that I did that maybe I went over too quickly, or if you have any other comments or suggestions, please drop those in the comments wherever you are. I'd love to take a few minutes to answer any questions. And before we end today, so I'm going to add all this stuff. Adds game timer, ends game, and a game over component. Push that up. If you want the source code for this game, if you want to check it out, try it for yourself, that is available on my GitHub repository, github.com/reverentgeek/ahot-trivia-game. AHOT stands for All Hands on Tech. That's this show that me and my colleague Jeremy are running for Pluralsight. Jeremy is also building a game, doing some really cool stuff with Phaser, I believe it is. Check out his channel and the stuff that he's doing. Yeah, if you have any questions, pop those in the chat where you are. We'll stay on for just a couple more minutes to see if anyone has any comments. If not, I really appreciate you hanging with me today and giving me some grace as I fumble around writing some code. But I like the progress that we made today. It was pretty cool. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for joining another All Hands on Tech. I am streaming most Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, uh, or whatever time it is where you are. And let's see, there will be no stream next week as we are uh, putting on an event, and but we do have something really special next week. It is a free event called Tech Skills Day. I'll be interviewing the creator of Sonic Pi, which is a music um, creation and performance tool that you can code. It's like you turn your code, you can write code to create music. It's a really awesome app and community, and there's all kinds of existing music that you can download through the community and play music on your computer. Um, but this event called Tech Skills Day is totally free. There you can register, watch some of the incredible sessions and keynotes. Scott Hanselman is one of the speakers there. Um, I'm trying to remember who else. I don't want to. I think I know, but I don't want to say something wrong. Tech Skills Day, April 20th. Yeah, Angie Jones, Sam Aaron, the creator of Sonic Pi, Scott Hanselman, which is a program partner at Microsoft, Sophie, uh, who my colleague Lars Clint will be emceeing the event. I'm going to post this in the comments. Again, it's a free event. There's a lot of cool sessions going on, and when you register, you are entered into a drawing to win a Steam Deck, the little portable game system, which is pretty awesome. Thank you again for joining me today. I hope you'll return on the next All Hands on Tech with your host, David Neal, Pluralsight Developer Advocate. My job is to help you be more awesome. So if there's anything I can do, any way I can help you on your tech skills journey, please let me know. You can contact me on my website, reverentgeek.com. I'm Reverent Geek on a lot of different social media platforms. There's lots of different ways you can look me up. And please do so that I can be of help to you. Uh, and again, thanks for joining today, and hope to see you again on another All Hands on Tech. Bye now.